Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our third lecture for this uh, lecture series, the 21-22 lecture series. And tonight we'll be presenting whole food plant-based diet. And Dr. Peseckis will be leading us in that discussion. But before we begin with that, I'd just like you to know that all of our lectures are recorded and they're on our website. And on the screen there, you see it's sciencealliancesave.org. So if you haven't seen the website yet, I'd encourage you to take a look at it. It's done very well. And we're really happy that it turned out the way that it did. So kind of take a peek at that, and then you'll see, what other lectures are coming, etc. We'll try to keep it up to date as much as possible. John, the meeting is being recorded. That should be off. No, maybe so they can see the screen.
We are recording right now.
Okay, the Science Alliance for Valuing the Environment, its acronym is SAVE. And the organization began a little over 30 years ago. And we continue as time goes on and seeing which direction we're being called to go. So we do sponsor, we have a quarterly newsletter that comes out. The newest one just came out yesterday, I believe, or the day before. So that you can catch up on. You can get caught up on things. We provide scholarships for students in a variety of venues. Northwest District Science Day. We're looking at a scholarship award right now. We have given awards and scholarships for kids going to summer camps. So that is, those are things we do. We also have a lecture series, of which this is number 3 in the series for this year. We have 2 more to come after this one here. We do present at Northwest District Science Day, and because of the pandemic, we were judging this online through Ohio State University, and it worked out very well. We were wondering how that was going to be, but it did work out. We also have one little fundraiser. It's for honey and maple syrup that is produced right here in the area by the local bees. And it can be purchased at All Good Things on the campus. And there's a gift shop here called All Good Things, and that's where we sell that. Let me think. I think that's pretty much what we're about. We're looking at some new initiatives now. And according to all or many other places, people are trying to figure out what's a new technique or what's a new way to do things that they've always been doing. So thank God for Zoom, because we were able to continue our lectures and also bring in some international speakers. And that gave us the energy to do that. I'd like to tell you about who is supporting us. We have 11 corporate sponsors: Budget Blinds of Toledo, the Sisters of St. Francis here in Sylvania, Sophia Center, Wild Birds Unlimited, Lubriplate in East Toledo, the Wright Financial Group, Lourdes University, Holy Spirit Catholic Community, the Baha'i Group of Sylvania, the Butterfly House, and our newest corporate sponsor is Lake Erie Waterkeeper. So that makes 11 corporate sponsors so far, and we're thrilled about that. Let's see, I think pretty much our mission of the organization is to link ecology, spirituality, and sustainability. We figure those are the 3 biggest things that we can do. We feel we're a catalyst for environmental change, and we're bringing groups together to help us to see one another and to see how we would fit together. Or work together in tandem. We also have, Nancy, how many? About 11, 10 or 11 sponsors, not sponsors, participants, associates, partnerships.
Partnership.
Yeah, partnerships. And they're alliances because they believe like what we believe. And we have looked at all of them and we've been connecting with them for some of them for a longer time than we thought. So that's what SAVE is, and in a little bit of a nutshell. So I'd like to turn this over to Nancy now and to look at our speaker for today and go from there. So Nancy?
Okay, thank you, sister. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for zooming into our January lecture. My name is Nancy Simon, and I have the honor of introducing Dr. Stephen Peseckis, who will speak on a whole food plant-based diet, minimizing salt, oil, and processed sugar, the key to eliminating cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes. Before we start, I'd also like to mention that a plant-based diet is not only good for us, but it's good for our planet, because up to 30% of total global emissions of carbon dioxide, methane, etc., are from food production. So our climate goals really cannot be reached without a change in our food system, and a plant-based diet is the main solution to doing that. Okay, it is an honor to introduce Dr. Stephen Peseckis. He is an associate professor of medicinal chemistry at the University of Toledo. He comes to us with some very impressive credentials and experience. He earned his BA in chemistry from Dartmouth College, his PhD in organic chemistry from MIT, and learned molecular and cell biology from postdoctoral studies at Princeton University and the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. He worked for over 7 years in the pharmaceutical industry, designing, synthesizing, and characterizing medicinal agents. He has taught and conducted research for over 25 years at the University of Toledo College of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences in a breadth of areas, including oncology, infectious disease, microbiology, endocrinology, medicinal chemistry, cell signaling pathways, drug delivery, research methodology, research ethics, and medicinal plants and alternative medicine. Welcome, Dr. Peseckis, and thank you so much for being here.
John, real quickly, it appears from the list that some people have not yet muted. Maybe they don't know how to do that. I can hear some other noises in the background.
Yes, if everybody could, if you could just mute your microphone, except for our presenters, that would be helpful on our end. Okay, Stephen, I think you're ready to rock and roll. So go ahead and share your screen.
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you want to continue? So I'm going to. So now my screen should be shared. Okay. I want to thank you very much for the invitation and for the great works you're doing and your contributions to the community. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about a plant-based diet. Those who practice it know it as an SOS diet, which means it has minimal salt, oil, and sugar. And it, you'll see as we talk that this type of diet can not only help prevent cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes, but also can reverse it. And sort of the mantra here, as you think about it, is every vegetable you can add to your plate that pushes off a piece of meat or dairy or animal product or processed food is going to make you feel better. It's going to improve your life.
Not with dairy. Wrong.
Well, so you'll see. So in appreciation of SAFE's environmental objectives, I just do want to mention that by having the plant-based diet, as was mentioned before about the emissions reductions, there's also a water benefit. For instance, it takes 2,400 gallons of water actually to raise a pound of meat. And using wheat and others, you're really talking about a fraction of that use of water. And water is very precious in areas outside of the Great Lakes. And also, again, the greenhouse gases just produced by animals is, in general, it's 7 times greater to raise meat compared to vegetables. So what does the diet that I'm going to talk about, what kind of conditions has it been known to help? It's been known to reduce the risk of strokes, heart attacks, type 2 diabetes, and there's also evidence relating, not mentioned here, but cancer, Alzheimer's disease, attention deficit disorder, Parkinson's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, autism, and obesity. Back in the 1960s and 70s, there was a woman named Ann Wigmore who was quite controversial, but one thing that she said that still rings true is she said that the food that you eat can either be the safest, the most powerful form of medicine, or the slowest form of poison. And one way to think of it is that every time you eat or drink something, you're either promoting, feeding a disease, or you're fighting it. Food is a very difficult topic because people have a lot of ingrained beliefs. Food, what people eat, sometimes it's a product of convenience, of necessity, what they can afford, how much time is available, particularly in this day and age, there seems to be food that's readily available, so people take advantage of it rather than preparing it themselves, unlike some previous eras. Also, there are ethical and religious beliefs related to food. Your family and your peers actually can be greatly influence your eating habits, and that can confound. Sometimes people will attribute things to genetics when it's actually perhaps it's actually more relating to what they've been raised to eat. Okay, philosophy obviously is a big ingrained there. There actually are such things as food addictions. And there's groups of people that are very concerned about and have considered what a food addiction is. Many people don't know they're addicted to certain types of food. And of course, your health status, let's face it, if you type 2 diabetes, people will often tell you not to eat things high in sugar, which kind of makes sense.
Let's see
But,
who's all
yes?
in here for my class.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Do I need to adjust anything? No, okay, all right. So, and people who study food, they consider a wide range of factors. So just to set something straight, eating a whole food plant-based diet is not just eating vegetables. Leafy green vegetables, you'll see, are the core of it. But if you, in fact, kale, which is probably one of the most respected or glorified cruciferous vegetable, it's actually, you need to eat 16 pounds of it to get to 2,000 calories a day. So you can't eat enough kale in a day to actually give you enough calories. So, but this is very interesting to think that there is a food or a group of foods that one can eat and not be worried about how much you eat, because you just simply can't eat enough of it. So mixed into a whole foods plant-based diet are things that will have calories, more calories. And so there are tubers such as potatoes and sweet potatoes. I should point out that just because they're called potatoes, there are different plant families. There are starchy vegetables like corn and peas, whole grains fit in there, and then legumes, chickpeas, which many of us know as, in hummus, in a Mediterranean diet, that those legumes are very important to be mixed in there. You can almost live on kidney beans. What we'll find is that one should eat in this diet is a spectrum of foods, that there's no one thing that is sufficient to eat. So you look for varieties of nutrients, not a single nutrient. And that's why you shouldn't just eat kale, and you should mix it up. Let me get to the bottom line, why a plant-based diet is better than a meat-based diet. This is an excerpt from a movie called The Game Changers, which there's a reference at the end of this presentation, which I encourage you to read and or to look at. And its main sponsor actually is Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you'll see that many of the high-performing athletes in the world are actually on a plant-based diet. That's their key to success. And this is actually something that's quite shocking. This is a comparison, and in the movie they actually show you, basically you have several young men and they're basically eating a taco salad, and one has meat in it and one doesn't. And this is actually a typical finding that you then draw the blood half an hour later and you spin it down. And what you see is that people who have eaten meat, they have a colloidal suspension that is can't be separated. And so this is flowing through the arteries every time you eat a piece of chicken or a piece of beef or even eggs, that you always have this fat going through your arteries. And when you see a person who's eaten a vegan meal, okay, that you end up with clear serum and very little fat. And this is even true. Avocados are high in fats and oils, and they still give a clear result. So you can imagine if you eat meat or dairy products 2 to 3 times a day, that your blood is always containing this colloidal fat. And when one starts thinking about atherosclerosis, one can understand why not eating plants can lead to cardiovascular disease. And here is, we're going to be talking about someone named Caldwell Esselstyn. He was the head of, he's in his 80s now, but he was the head of cardiovascular medicine at the Cleveland Clinic. And back in the 90s, and actually even into the 80s, he started, actually in 1986, he switched to a plant-based diet. He's known for, he believes in eating 8 fistfuls of kale a day. And he showed that you can reverse cardiovascular disease. And so there are people, and I've met a number of them, and some are very impressive, where basically they're given 3 months to live. They've had 5 cabbages. They can't have any more. And basically people give up on them. They go to the Cleveland Clinic. They get put on this diet. And I've met a woman who's actually running half marathons 3 years after she told she could hardly walk up a stair. And by going on the diet, this is what the kinds of things that happen. Here you see a blockage to the upper right here of an artery that feeds the blood to the heart. And here, after a period of time, a year or 2, you actually see that following this diet, it's actually reversed. I've taught about cardiovascular medicine. That used to be one of the areas of studies. We have no drugs that can do anything like this. Okay. And so in the end, I got to say that diseases such as cardiovascular disease, so things leading to stroke and to heart attacks, and type 2 diabetes, both of these are what we call metabolic diseases. They're disease caused by poor eating, and you eat your way into these diseases, and you can actually eat your way out of it. Okay. And just to show us, this is the 90s, one of their examples. And this has been repeated over and over by people who can stick to such a diet. Here you see a time frame, July 2017, an 80% blockage reduced after 2.5 years to 0% blockage. And normally no one ever mentions that this is doable. Most of the time people are told about that a diet intervention can reverse these diseases only when they're on their last legs, rather than up front, so they never have these conditions. So what is the gold standard? So when you're in the world of plant diets, there's actually many different kinds, and people argue about, like, should you eat nuts or not? But if you've been on a meat-based diet, this is going to be kind of shocking. So this Caldwell Esselstyn, this is the gold standard diet, really hard to hold to, but this is what you strive for. And so you eat fruits, you eat vegetables, you eat grains and legumes. What you don't eat is anything with a mother or a face. Okay, you don't eat dairy. You minimize oils. And here we have a very controversial area, which you might not think about, but whether you should eat, Esselstyn holds you shouldn't eat nuts or avocado because they're high in oils. Some people say not to eat wheat, though wheat is a grain, but that has to do if you have anything like celiac disease and you have certain allergies to certain products in wheat. But otherwise, wheat's actually a good thing. Minimize added sugars and low on salt. Salt is a killer. So what does this diet normally look like? So in the morning, people tend to prefer, it seems strange, steel cut oats. Other oats are good, okay? But steel cut actually have more surface area, and then you don't add sugar, you don't put the brown sugar with it, but you add cinnamon, and you use milks, but nut milks, not dairy, not cow-based milks. And change up your paradigm. There's nothing wrong with eating a salad for breakfast or eating a bunch of beans. And many people might think, well, maybe this is something you have for dinner, but actually it's good to start your day exercising and then eat something that has a very low glycemic index. It doesn't release much sugar and that. Lunch, stir fry vegetables, that's an option. And this drives many people don't understand how you can do this, but actually you can fry vegetables using water, not oil. And again, this diet is to minimize the use of oils. You bake things, a lot of things, tofu, onions. You cut. Many people will just cut up zucchinis and all sorts of vegetables and bake them at the beginning of the week, and then you use them in wraps and other things later. Eggplants, onions, mushrooms, and people have fondnesses. Some people say you should have mushrooms every day to help boost your immune system. So that's part of things. Dinner, okay. Vegan burgers are one thing. Vegetarian chili, spinach sauces, and lasagna. Instead of using cheese, there are now cheese substitutes. A company, Dea, you've probably seen that in the supermarkets. They make all sorts of things. The problem with them is those products are high in fat and oil, but they're not dairy. So at least it's something to bridge. And I'll tell you, they make a cheesecake that's amazing. But cheese, many people have substitutes by mixing nutritional yeast in with ground cashews. So a large part of this plant-based diet is actually interacting with people and trying to come up with recipes to make things delicious. So the heart of any of these diets are cruciferous vegetables. The reason for this, actually, in the end, is that one thing that plants contain that no other food source does is fiber. And fiber is actually a polymer of sugars different than the glucose and the fructose we're normally talking about. There are so many different molecules. Sugars are molecules with carbon and hydrogen and oxygen. And we normally think of them as sweet, but plants are actually made of them and they contain a lot of them. And we can't digest them. And just like cows eat grass and they digest it because they have organisms in their stomach, in their udders, that are digesting them. And actually, we have the same thing. We just don't think of ourselves like cows. But we have as many, if not, we have actually more bacteria in us than we have cells in our body. And 70% of them are actually in the large colon. And in the large colon, these fibers, which have not been digested by our normal digestive enzymes, make it there, and our bacteria digest them. And they do things like release chemicals called butyrates. They're 4-carbon compounds, and they actually have the ability to alter our gut. They seal it up. You might have heard of leaky gas, gut syndrome. The gases produced by the fermentation of these fibers helps reduce that. It actually regulates our immune system. They've actually found that some of these bacteria actually have direct communication and actually release neurotransmitters. Hence, some of these things when we talk about why might it have an effect on mood or ADHD, our gut bacteria are incredibly important, and the more we learn about them, the more they we appreciate them. And the best gut bacteria for us are actually fostered by eating cruciferous vegetables. The flip side to that is the bacteria that grow in us that live off of meat products actually produce a chemical called trimethylamine, which in our liver gets oxidized to trimethylamine oxide, and that's inflammatory and inflames all our arteries. So every time you eat meat, you actually inflame your arteries, and every time you eat vegetables, you actually calm things down. Lettuce is actually not a cruciferous vegetable, but it has lots of fiber. There's lots of types, so that's obviously salads are great. Spinach is fantastic, but again, it's a different family, and that means different fibers, which will promote different bacteria from growing. And plus, they provide vitamins, so vitamin A, C, K. You got to be careful of oxalates sometimes, which can be both good and bad. And if we were to talk about medicinal plants, we'll see things like clover have oxalates, and some animals actually get sick from eating too much of it. Sweet potatoes, if you have a choice, normally eating a sweet potato is better than eating a white potato. The sweet potatoes contain more fiber, and they actually get metabolized a little different than white potatoes, and they actually, in the end, produce less sugar than white potatoes. That being said, white potatoes are still a great thing, but again, you bake them, you don't fry them, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Salt. This is from the FDA. Our guideline from salt is we should not have more than 500 milligrams a day. If you go and you look at almost any canned good, you're like over 500 milligrams. Oftentimes, even a soup of Campbell's soup will have 625 milligrams. It is really hard to, actually the USDA is at 1,500, but to stay healthy, to keep your blood pressure lower, it should be 500. It's really hard to meet this target if you're eating processed foods. Oil, it's surprising. Everybody thinks everything needs to be fried or cooked in oil, and that oil, we'll see in a moment, is what does you in. Okay, you can substitute it with low salt vegetable stock. You can make your own vegetable stock that has almost no oil in it. Some people use applesauce instead of oil. So part of figuring out how to do this diet is figuring out tricks on how to make the nutritious food taste good. Sugar, it's not that you don't eat sugar, but you don't add sugar. And there's a lot of historical arguments and analyses looking at when we discovered sugar cane. That's really only been 120 years. And so what many people who practice this kind of diet, they debate a lot about what to do about sugar. And so, but the use of maple syrup, figs, dates, it's part of it. Eggs, it's amazing what chia and flax seeds can do. And there are lots of recipes for cakes and other kind of baked goods that instead of using an egg, you can actually use chia seeds. And we'll see in a moment that eggs, particularly the yolks, are a huge source of cholesterol, and you get far more than you need. So these are some of the statements that often you'll hear, and there are certain people that advocate for these. Kind of suggestions are not to eat 4 hours before bedtime, not to eat after 6 p.m. Sometimes, counting calories actually can matter. Though if you're eating mostly just whole like vegetables, your calorie count is going to be hard to get up there. But basically, and this is a guy, Fuhrman, who advocates that you shouldn't eat after 6, and you should count anything you eat after 6 before you go to bed as 2 calories. And he even advocates you go to bed a little bit hungry. In with this, as they say, the biggest meal of the day should normally be lunch. Again, trying to exercise for breakfast. There's a guy named Merzer who's actually in orthopedics, and he deals with knee replacements all the time. And he practices a plant-based diet he has his entire life. And what he starts his patients off is, before he does surgery, is get them to try a plant-based diet for a month or two. And it actually cuts down on inflammation in the knees. And his point is that every pound above your knee, above your waist, is like 5 pounds on the knees. So if you could lose 5 pounds before you do a transplant, or transplant, not transplant, but a knee replacement, just think of that. If it's 5 times multiplier, losing 5 pounds is like removing a 25-pound sledgehammer that's hitting on your knee joint every time you walk. Okay, and you may end up not needing to replace those knees. Okay, again, the green vegetables like kale, it's like, 1 pound is 100 calories. I find very ironic that if you go to Chipotle and you see what main item has the most calories, and it's the vegetables at 320. You're chicken and you're at 180. And the trouble is they use a ton of oil they think they need to use oil to cook those vegetables. The intrinsic value of those vegetables is like 20 calories. And it's really 300 calories from the oil they cook it in. If they were aware that you can cook vegetables and stir fry them without oil, they would have a better product. Okay. And you should only eat a few seeds. Nuts have a lot of oil in them, which means they're very calorie dense, and that's going to be part of things. And you should eat beans and legumes as the main source of calories for the day. Eat the spectrum, eat kale, sprouted grains. So, Ezekiel bread, you'll see that frozen. That's like a real winner. And you don't know much about sprouted grains. They're much different than flours. Avocados, guacamole, it's the oil content. But if you don't worry about weight, then avocados, go for it. Brown rice is preferred over white rice because it has in the end a lower glycemic index, which means it releases less sugar. Sweet potatoes are good. Mushrooms are best eating cooked, and mushrooms some people advocate eating something every day, and they have some very beneficial chemicals in them. Another common saying in this area is to chew your food. So there are many diets like the blender diets that are all vegan. You're doing a lot of juices and stuff. The thing is, if you eat an orange compared to juicing an orange, the sugar rushes into your body in 5 minutes when you juice it, and it takes half an hour or more when you're chewing it, and it takes longer. So again, don't rush meals. And there are enzymes in the mouth, and if you chew it, you give time for those enzymes to work. If you swallow it you just drink it down, then that part of digestion gets lost. So we're going to start. This topic is longer than or bigger than I can just cover in this lecture. And there's some very strong opinion leaders that have some very good things to kind of wisdom to impart. And so I want to introduce you to them for much of the rest of this lecture. And so one of those people is Joel Fuhrman. He's an MD. He has evolved over time. So this is a food pyramid from, say, 2016, 2017. And he acknowledges that some people have a real hard time giving up poultry and fish. And many people go like, well, what about fish? The omega-3 fatty acids. It's still animal protein. You still are going to be making the trimethylamine, which is going to be pro-inflammatory, and it's going to lead to cardiovascular disease. So he really doesn't advocate the top of this pyramid so much. And again, you see, 30 to 70% of calories from vegetables, to eat fruits, to eat beans. And so he's what we call a nutritarian. He believes in high vitamin content food with minimal calories. And so just to another point I want to bring up is when we look at the life expectancy in the United States, and this is 2019, Actually, COVID is going to lower these numbers by probably 1.5 to 2 years. But basically, if you live to 65, it means you haven't died from childhood diseases and a lot of things earlier, and you're more likely to live longer. What a plant-based diet, no one practicing a plant-based diet has lived longer than anybody else. The argument for it is to have a better quality of life, not a longer life. And the idea is that actually people who are eating a meat-based diet, a dairy-based diet, are actually in the long run going to have a poorer quality of life, are going to have more issues later on. Now you have people like Betty White, who the week before, she passed away, said her key was not eating greens, anything green. And you had George Burns smoked cigars, so you have certain people that, yeah, they're lucky and that's good and they're blessed. But for the most people, if you're eating a meat-based diet, you're going to be having heart attacks and strokes before you're in your 80s and 90s. And that's probably not going to happen if you follow this. So if we look at the leading causes of death, we see that heart disease and then cancer. So heart disease is up there, and it's broken in if you add cerebrovascular diseases, so strokes, and then you add in type 2 diabetes. You see, again, these three things are all caused by poor eating. And that poor eating, by definition, means you're not eating a plant-based diet. So in the plant-based world, things such as additives and potential carcinogens in food become more important, because then cancer becomes more important once you dodge heart disease and diabetes as your major concern. So again, a plant-based diet is not to make you live longer, it's just to make you live better. And if you can avoid having cardiovascular disease, it's just going to be good. Needless to say, if you smoke or drink a lot of alcohol, that's going to also negate a lot of the benefits of the diet, because these are overwhelming factors.
Whether or not US not being here at all.
Okay. All right. So, and we're looking at, certain things that people are thinking that, well, maybe a pill could change things. But actually, if you add something like 325 milligrams of aspirin, which is normally for a while, and they've kind of gone away from this, 81 milligrams of aspirin is the baby aspirin to help prevent strokes. But actually eating the plant-based diet, you actually have similar chemicals are being available, but in a slow release form for much greater. And actually, if you in that Game Changers movie, they show something that's kind of interesting, is that actually eating meat tends to be vasoconstrictive, and eating plants tends to be neutral or vasodilating. And so many people take drugs like ACE inhibitors to dilate their blood vessels. So in one hand, they're eating a steak, which constricts it, and then they take a pill to go against it. If you just eat vegetables, you don't need to take, it's conceivable you don't need to take the pill. So things, you have all sorts of different diets, and people organize those to different eating pyramids. This is a typical American one. Oh, you know what? This, oh, I did something wrong here. All right, I actually pulled up something that's not quite what I wanted to show. All right, but one of the problems with a plant-based diet is many people say, where do you get your protein? There's almost no place you walk into when you're a vegan and they say, what are you going to have for a protein? And you say, oh, I'm just going to have a salad. And they go, well, what do you want for your protein? And so many people go for soy. But in fact, if you look at the protein content of things like lentils which also are high in a Middle Eastern diet, that you are going to have, they have more protein. So here, 50 grams of protein in a cup of lentils compared to chicken has half that number of protein. So that's one of the huge misconceptions, that you have no lack of proteins. And then some people will say, well, the proteins in vegetables aren't complete. But actually, that's not true. There are every type of protein you need can be found in a plant. One of the points are, remember the elephants and the cattle and the things that we eat that are meat, okay? Where do they get their proteins? From the plants they eat. You know, it's not from other organisms. We see different types of food. Quinoa is very popular, but if you go down, look at chickpeas, how much protein is in them. So this hummus is pretty good. Our only concern with hummus that you buy is that they add a lot of oil to it, which ups the calories, again, unnecessarily. So one can actually prepare hummus, you know, with chickpeas and grind them up with lemon, and you lower the calories and you get tons of protein. Hemp seeds, which of course are from cannabis plants, also are high in protein. So what I want to next show is some people that are important that you might want to look at. I want to point out that you'll see at the end, there's a very compelling interview done by Sanjay Gupta with President Clinton, who, if you know his health record, he had a heart attack and several bypasses, and he adopted a whole food plant-based diet. And this is prior to his wife running for president. When she ran for president, he kind of recanted it a little bit because this is not politically correct to be on a plant-based diet, especially 10 years ago. But he, in that video, attributes a plant-based diet to saving his life. And again, I'll advocate the game changers, but there's another video which Forks Over Knives, which for a generation before this was a game changer. So people extremely important and things that they advocate. Caldwell Esselstyn, he is, as I say, he figured out the gold standard. It's really hard to achieve, but when normally people have gone to him when they've been told they're going to die next month, and he basically pulls them back from the brink by telling them what to do. Okay, so he's head of cardiovascular surgery. He saw so many people, and he just got, people could just say you're going to die, and he says this is not what we should be doing because we're getting at the symptoms and not the cause. And to treat the cause, you change the diet. And so he normally, in the end, people get off all their cardiovascular drugs when they're done with this diet, if they do it in the strictest fashion. It's very hard to do it in a strict fashion, which is why you're going to need some of the other people that I'm going to mention in a moment. The idea is most cardiovascular people will mention the diet as a last resort, not the first. And if they started there, there'd be a lot less surgeries and drug use. Colin Campbell is a huge environmental advocate. He's actually started from cattle ranching. He was in biochemistry at Cornell University, and he is author of something called the China Study, which is something very much looking at basically prior to the westernization of China, you did not find people dying of heart attacks and strokes because they were on a plant or having diabetes, those who were on a plant-based diet. Joel Fuhrman, he's a nutritarian. He advocates a nutrient-rich diet. He advocates eating nuts, and Esselstyn doesn't, which to you guys, that's going to sound like a minor thing, but in the world of plant-based nutrition, it's a big thing. He advocates for calorie restriction, and many people are well aware that if you do want to live longer and healthier, you should not be having an overabundance of calories every day. You need enough, but not too much. And that's harder. So he's the one that advocates go to bed hungry, but not too hungry. Neil Barnard, you got type 2 diabetes, you got to look at this guy's stuff. He has basically, everyone treats that we don't know the cause of type 2 diabetes, but there's really a lot of evidence suggests that it's actually a natural response to having too much fat in your cells, particularly your muscle cells. So by minimizing the fat, that's why it's so important to minimize those oils, because that's how you reduce type 2 diabetes. You exercise, you lose 20% of your body mass, and you go, and it helps control things. So the high blood pressure is a symptom, but the fat is the cause. And this is what's so tragic. If you, because I have type 2 diabetes, first thing I was told is, I went on the web, first thing you find out is people say, oh, you can eat all the fat tastes good. And then I'm talking to people, and it was very scary when I first had it. Everybody's saying, oh, look, I had my toes amputated. I had to go on insulin within a year. I've been on a much stricter about my diet in the last 6 years. I don't have any of these symptoms. And technically, you have high blood sugar. That's not good, but actually you don't end up with high blood pressure is not as bad as having eating high fat. The ideal is to cut both these down. But consult Neil Barnard if you have diabetes. Michael Greger, he is evidence-based. He has some very great books out there, How Not to Diet, evidence-based weight loss, plant-based diets. He has people going through the literature, and he evaluates clinical trials. He puts stuff together. He's a fact checker. He's amazing. The things that he comes up with, and if someone comes up with something that says this isn't good to eat, yeah, he'll go and say, don't do that. But he's a fact source. Michael Clapper, he's an MD and a biochemist, and he has a very interesting proposition, which is true. It's called oxidative priority, and it explains a lot of reasons. You'll have a lot of overweight vegans, okay? It doesn't mean just because you eat this that you lose weight. That's not the case whatsoever. That's what I'm saying. It's not easy to do this. But again, you should eat low calorie density plants. But what happens is, how do we get into our problems? We burn sugars and store fats. And it's true biochemically, people think you eat fat and you get energy out of it. No, it just gets stored. Our brain runs on carbohydrates. And that's part of the danger of diets like the keto diets, that you don't get any carbohydrates. And that's part of the problems when you have type 2 diabetes, and they say don't eat fruits because they're high in sugars, or don't eat a lot of things. But our brain needs carbohydrates. And so like if you have a pizza, so you say you're eating regular pizza, you burn the crust and you store all the fat and the cheese. Okay. You eat a hamburger, you store the fat and the meat, and you burn the bun. Okay. So it's important to understand that you should not really combine fats and sugars when you're eating, because then you're just going to be storing those fats. And that's his paradigm here. Pizza, burn the crust. French fries, you burn the potato and you store the cooking oil. That's why, at least if you bake the potato, there's no cooking oil to store. You just burn the potato. John McDougall, low fat, high fiber diet. He will even advocate for things like a potato diet, and people have lost lots of weight and done just fine eating potatoes. He has some interesting links between meat diets and having autism and having attention deficit disorder. So it's worth looking at, okay? But so again, a whole food starch-based nutrition. Again, our brain is going to burn carbohydrates. And if we deny our brain those calories, then even though we're trying to lose weight or control diabetes, then we could do something bad to us. Stephen Esser, he's the orthopedics guy I referred to. He's an up-and-coming young guy based out of Florida. He does, he goes, again, he tries to have his patients first change their eating habits before he does surgery. He has a he comes from a family that has always been plant eaters from the 60s. And he keeps like fruits and stuff so that people don't end up eating candy bars and other things in his office. And he has very good evidence linking like autoimmune diseases to non-plant-based diets. Chef AJ, again, you want to eat, you want to enjoy what you're eating. This is the support aspect. She's one of a number of great people that have figured out how to make a whole foods plant-based diet something doable and enjoyable. You don't have to give up flavor and other things. You just have to learn how to cook, and these are great things. You know, some people get militant. She's one of them. She basically says, keep the temptations out of the house. You don't let potato chips in the house. You don't let those processed foods in. And she's very big on food addictions because she views herself as having been addicted to certain foods. We find them for comfort. We find them for emotional reasons, and we actually don't need them, but we're eating them and we're gaining weight because of that. So she once weighed a lot more and she fought back. And so she's very much worth looking at. This is something I'm going to be talking about. It's a little extreme. This guy's really good, Anthony Lim, and he is currently the director of a place called True North. And True North is a facility which is north of San Francisco, and they have a very interesting approach to losing weight. And it really was championed. Oh, and I'm going to do this slide's a little bit off. This is a guy, Glenn Merzer. He's a playwright. He is if you look him up, he has some very humorous things. He links the food to climate, and he's written some very good books about that and showing why a plant-based diet is, if you're environmentally concerned, a plant-based diet is the way to go. Here's the guy, we call him Dr. Death, Dr. Alan Goldstein. He breaks the paradigm. He's scary only because he says things that you couldn't believe. And that is, if you have weight issues or you have issues, that you really need to readjust recalibrate your body. Okay, he advocates medically supervised water fasting, and so people have fasted for as much as 60 days without food. Okay, and actually, they routinely have people go without food for 40 days. Keys to this is you don't exercise during this time, and you get your blood checked every day, and you do your water. And but he doesn't even let you start it unless you're going to be committed to doing a whole food-based diet, because his thing is you're just going to undo all the good you've done for yourself. You know, you detoxify yourself, and then you just throw all the toxins in. So they give cooking lessons so that once you're done with the fasting, you eat properly. And this is a very interesting thing. If you look through the news, actually in 1984 in California, he proposed a study to study water fasting, and they actually called him criminally cruel. Nowadays, if you look at things in California and other places, water fasting is cutting edge, and he's made it there. So he's someone to look at. I should note, even though we call him Dr. Death simply because it's scary, he always dresses in black, but he's treated over 20,000 people, and almost all the times it's high success rates. Nobody's ever died from his supervision. And so it's something to keep note of. Dr. Sabatino is another person in these groups. He's a biochemist, and you can see some of his, he considers genetics, and he considers the biochemistry of what happens in eating, and some of his lectures are available on YouTube. Other support groups. North of us in Michigan, there's the Plant-Based Nutrition Support Group. They are fantastic. They also have lecture programs. They can connect you to people who know recipes. You're having a hard time and struggles. They're another resource. Their founder, and here's his story, that he basically, again, had coronary disease, and by changing his diet, he did not need to have surgeries, and basically is healthy and active as ever. Another group to our east is the National Health Association. They're once known as the Natural Hygiene Association. They have roots going back to the 1950s, and actually they trace themselves back to 150 years ago. But even as early as the 1950s and 60s, they were having meetings and to talk about their things. They laughed about, they would have like a whole apple and like a whole, fruit, a whole vegetable, carrot. And that's what they had at their meetings, because that's all they could think of for whole food. If you go to these meetings now, it's like a buffet. People go just to eat. Okay, the plant-based foods are so incredible, and it's nice to have chefs that know how to make it. And there's been a number that have managed to do it. And they actually have another talk. If you want to see the Clapper guy and Chef AJ, they're having one actually coming up at the end of January. Basic things. Stanford Medical School has some really great lectures if you want to learn about nutrition. And just to finish this up, I just want to point out that this documentary by Sanjay Gupta is for those of you who lived through the Clinton era. This puts a new spin on it to understand his health issues, and actually that he resorted to this, and this is what saved his life. Okay, and then the game changers. This is again, the original movie was Forks Over Knives back in 2009, 2010, but the most recent movie is The Game Changers. I encourage you, if you get Netflix or whatever, this might be available to you free. Also, one can purchase it. But this, just looking at the trailers for this, will wake you up, and you'll see people that are very well known, like James Cameron and Schwarzenegger and Jackie Chan. They attribute their success in parts. Early on, they might have like Arnold Schwarzenegger eating meat, but nowadays he minimizes that, because of it. And so I just want to thank you all for listening. I want you all to be the best that you can be. And the way to do that is to educate yourselves and try and make informed decisions. I could tell you that to try and adopt an SOS whole food plant-based diet is not easy. It's worthwhile to learn what it is and to strive to meet it. Okay, and there's a lot of other people that are trying to do this. The more compelled, if you are in a family with cardiovascular disease, or you have it yourself, if you have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 1 is immune based. It's not going to be fixed by this, though you can be benefited by it. And there's some people who have tried to who are type 1 who have benefited by doing this diet, by increasing their insulin receptor sensitivity. But anyway, so hope all is well in your future, and thank you for your attention.
Dr. Peseckis, are you
Yes.
taking questions?
Yes, if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'm very open to it. Should I unshare the screen? Or
Okay, I was wondering if, so these meat alternatives that, are packaged, they're probably not that great for us with their sodium and all their additives and.
Okay, so the people who are like Ezelsin will say, that's a crutch, don't go there. Other people, it's not so easy to just, if you've been eating meat all the time, and especially kids, that's a whole other issue. How do you, if you're an adult and you make this decision? First of all, I'd say you can never force this on anybody. If somebody doesn't want to do this, they don't want to do it. Okay, that's fine. But if eating a Beyond Burger at or at Burger King, choosing that instead of the Whopper itself, that moves. And I'll tell you the trouble with Burger King, if they understood a little better, they put mayonnaise on the non-meat. Okay, that doesn't work. They also offer you cheese on it. If you're vegan, you don't eat cheese. Vegetarians eat cheese. Vegans don't. Okay, and so a lot of people don't understand that. And even at the hospital at University of Toledo, they make a vegan burger and they automatically put cheese on it because they don't think you're getting any protein. And that's why I'm making this argument that plants have all the proteins you need, and you don't need to add cheese. You don't need to add anything else. But
Okay.
At the college, we tried to get different foodstuffs into the cafeteria area. And the chef would always say that the fellas and gals that are the athletes, they want meat. They have to have meat. They can't see, they
they
can't.
got to see the Game Changer movie.
Right,
That-
they
that-
don't.
that-
The
that's a
Game
killer.
Changer, that-
And this is the thing that they go with. Okay, so it's I don't know what to say here, but basically they make a powerful argument saying that if you're going to go on a date with somebody and you think you want to do something later, you should have a salad, not a hamburger. Remember when I talked about vasoconstriction, vasodilation? So, I mean, they're trying to get people to understand the advantage of eating plants.
Mhm.
I got a question. Do you have any thoughts on fermented foods?
Fermented, it's fine. I mean, as long as it's plant-based. I mean, pickled things. All the like kombucha, that's fantastic. All those things, you want a variety. All those things are good. That's all food for bacteria in your gut. It's good, So, yeah, people. There's a lot of things. So again, there's plant-based, almond-based yogurts like Company Kite. So again, you don't do the dairy yogurts. I mean, it has to do with the proteins and they're breaking down to pro-inflammatory compounds, So,
Right.
and again, that's why I say, look at this. If anyone's interested, look at some of the other references I mentioned in this talk. And it builds up. It's a hard paradigm change to say, that Thanksgiving turkey just doesn't work,
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I've got a question. When you started this, how long ago was it, and what was it that caused you to want to get involved with an SOS diet?
Well, my wife. So she's a pharmacist, and she is always investigating things. And so I'd say over 10 years ago, my wife Jane, she investigates things very well, and she started getting connected with people such as Chef AJ. And she wanted to lose weight and control her weight and to be the healthiest possible. And this came up. And so we had been kind of aware of plant-based diets, but we slowly, it's a transition. And then you wonder, well, how much can I cheat? Can I eat a fish a week? And I teach a course in medicinal plants and alternative medicine. And I was surprised. So I went to, I had a reunion. I advised for a number of student groups. So I met up with some alumni, and we go to a steakhouse or a place for ribs. And I sit down and I order a salad. And the student next to me orders, the ribs. And he goes, "Don't worry, Dr. Peseckis. I remember what you told me 4 years ago," he says. "This is my cheat day." And they had a very interesting question. It ends up, when you change to a plant-based diet, your biome starts changing over within 24 hours. So like when I eat, I've actually eaten milk products, they don't feel so good anymore. Okay. They used to just be fine. So your gut changes, and, your rate of passage of food changes dramatically through your intestine. You're going to be having things moving through in 12 to 24 hours instead of 24 to 48 hours. Your contact time of chemicals you've ingested is lessened by a whole food diet. But anyway, we went to talks. Jane Esselstyn is actually it seems weird. She actually teaches sex education in schools, and her father is Caldwell Esselstyn, and so they have conferences on women's health. Many women benefit tremendously from this type of diet, and so they had, usually before COVID, every spring we're having conferences targeting women. So we went to those. We actually had dinner with the Esselstyns, and we had chefs from nursing homes. We had a person in his 80s, and his goal, he had cardiovascular disease, and he wanted to live for another year and a half at least to see his nephew graduate from high school. And that's why he found his incentive to do it. People with multiple sclerosis found that they did not have outbreaks when they switched to this diet. And this is the trouble is no, I'm not going to advocate for that, but I'll tell you, people have looked at this because rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases tend to be greatly reduced by doing this. But the evidence is clearly there for diabetes because of Barnard and for cardiovascular disease because of Eggleston. But there's other disease states that people have nothing to lose. And again, the more vegetables you eat, look at those vegetables as medicine. I mean, you're going to go out and maybe you're older and you're taking Lipitor. Have you just thought of not adding oil to fry, a little bit of water in a frying pan instead of oil? You're doing more good for you than taking that medicine. But don't get off the medicine. Always consult your doctor. The trouble is doctors don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
One question I don't know.
I would like to share something if you guys let me. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to Lords to bring someone to talk about plant-based diet. And also thanks, Stephen, to everything you said. I've been vegan for 2.5 years, I think, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I play soccer here at Lords, and I never felt as good as I'm feeling right now. Just eating plant-based diet was one of the best decisions that I ever do every day. I work in the cafeteria here, and unfortunately that's like someone was saying that everyone asks for meat, and unfortunately that's true. But I think the biggest problem is the lack of knowledge that people have about it, because I've been studying every day more and more, and every day I convince myself that plant-based diet, it is the best option for us as human beings, as we wanted to have a better life. And another thing that I miss a little bit of the beginning, Stephen, but something, of course, we're focusing on our health here, but another part of going vegan is the animal cruelty that it happens. And I think that's one of the biggest things for me right now. I started because of my health, looking to improve my performance. But as I study more and more, I see that there is no reason to kill to eat. And I don't think we as a human beings, as animals as well, we don't have the right to kill other species. So I mean, it's a question that I leave for you guys. Why do we love dogs but we hate the pigs? There are studies that show that pigs, they are smart as a 3-year-old kid. So they feel the pain. And what we end up doing is that we are eating all the stress that they have been through, So I think that's one of the biggest things for me. So I just want to share that with you guys. That was awesome, Stephen. And thanks, Lords, to bring someone to talk about it. I wish more students were here to hear that. But unfortunately, people still have a misunderstanding what plant-based diet, what veganism is. But anyway, I just like to say thank you and share that with you guys. And if you are willing to try, I would try. You'll see the benefits, and it's something that is not that hard. Once you change your mindset and you don't see that as meat, as food anymore, you see that as an animal dad in your plate, and also you see all the benefits that have on yourself and in other people, in the environment as well. There's no way to go back. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Many people, when they switch to being to a plant-based diet, they actually feel a sense of euphoria and a physical feeling of better well-being. It's not unusual. And you kind of forget about that in time, but if you do the switch, you'll see it. Hopefully you'll see that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you can sleep better at night. You don't have to worry. You're right. There are other arguments. This is the health argument, but there are other benefits to following this pathway. Any more questions? Anyone?
You mentioned about not drinking milk and doing nut-based milk like almond milk.
Mhm.
Someone told me that there's more and more a shortage of almonds and
There are different ways to do it. You can actually make your own almond milk, but actually it's not just almond milk. So there's of course soy milk. Some people have some concerns, and soy is a hard thing because you have tofu, you have a lot of products can be made out of soy. And of course, Ohio is one of the bigger producers of soybeans. And you have and some people, like all the corn is now genetically modified. Many of the soybeans are. Europe doesn't modify anything. But on the other hand, the benefits of eating soy is sort of okay. Oat milk, many people like, I know my wife likes oat milk for creamers, and she still drinks coffee. So for me, I drink the almond because my blood sugars are not good. I'm fine with the symptoms, the diet treats the symptoms, but I'm not disciplined enough to avoid the sugars enough. And almonds don't affect the glycemic index, whereas oats do. So if you don't have issues with diabetes, then you might like oat milk because it seems richer and creamier,
Mhm.
Some people, you'll see they have sweetened and unsweetened milks. They have it vanilla flavored. It's really strange. When you go to vegan burgers, all of a sudden meat burgers seem pretty limited because you can make vegan burgers out of vegetables, out of mushrooms, out of all sorts of kind of beans. There's a whole variety, and there's different tricks how to keep the oils down and whatever, and they all taste different, and all of a sudden you look back at a meat burger and it's like just a meat burger,
Yeah.
You have 50 choices on one hand and like one on the other, it's like, so you expand actually your palate that way. So
Thank you.
Mhm.
And I emphasize support groups. If someone wants to do this, really go online, or even email me and I'll get in touch with my wife. She has some people that she interacts with that she just loves. Okay. And they're very supportive, and you have different personalities working in here. And you also have some people are trying to make money off of this. And one of the ways is just talking about it, and so it's okay, but it's nice to have support groups, like especially if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to figure out a new recipe. My wife will go have YouTube videos, and there are people showing you how to cook step by step, and you end up with these incredible dishes. Again, it takes time, and that's what people will go to Taco Bell because it's 2 minutes. And so there are strategies. People will do pre-prep of food the week before or the weekend before, and then they'll have stuff for 3 or 4 days, and that's worth learning. Okay.
All right. Any more questions for Dr. Peseckis? Thank you so much, Dr. Peseckis, for your fascinating explanation of how everything we put in our bodies matter, and in the chemical interactions. It was just, I can't wait to watch you on our website so I can take more notes. But it just seems like adapting a plant-based diet is a no-brainer, because it's not only good for us, but it's good for our environmental impact and climate change. It's been said the best thing someone avoiding meat and dairy is the single biggest way to reduce your impact on the earth too. And then of course there's animal abuse, cruelty and neglect, and the enhancement of social justice and sustainability. It just goes on and on and on. So Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I wanted to say that our next lecture is March 15th, 2022 from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Please note that time change since our speaker is in the United Kingdom, and it will be on Zoom. The title is Trespassing Across America, One Man's Epic Never Done Before Hike Along the Keystone XL Pipeline. So that should be fascinating. And the speaker is Ken Lugunas. And it'll be on our website, all the information. It's open to everyone. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And thanks again, Dr. Peseckis. It was fascinating. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks for being here.
Good night. Thank you.
Mhm.